There's a specific kind of person, and you probably know at least one, or you are one, who will be in the middle of a perfectly ordinary conversation, and then suddenly announce that a group of flamingos is called a flamboyance. Nobody asked, it didn't really fit, but something in their brain filed it away years ago and apparently decided right now was the moment. Here's what makes that strange. That same person probably can't reliably remember where they left their keys this morning. They forgot a name 2 minutes after hearing it. But the flamingo thing? Crystal clear. Locked in. Permanent, that's not an accident. And it's not a flaw, it's actually one of the most revealing things about how human memory really works, and most people never think about it quite this way. Let's start with the biggest misconception most of us carry around without realizing it. We tend to imagine memory as a kind of storage system. Put something in, it stays. Put in more important things, they stay better. Study harder, retain more. But that's not even close to how the brain actually operates. Your brain doesn't organize information by importance. It doesn't care what your teacher said would be on the test. It doesn't weigh facts by their practical value or how often someone told you to remember them. What it does respond to, almost automatically, almost involuntarily, is emotional activation. The brain's memory systems are wired to the brain's feeling systems. They're not separate departments. They share the same building. And the fundamental rule is this: the stronger the emotional signal in the moment you encounter something, the more aggressively the brain works to hold on to it. Surprise works. Wonder works. Mild confusion works. That specific sensation of the world behaving differently than you expected, that works especially well. So when a child reads that some species of jellyfish are technically considered biologically immortal, and something in them goes, wait, what? That's not just curiosity. That's a neurological event. The brain has detected a violation of its model of reality. Something didn't match the prediction. And that mismatch triggers a cascade that essentially tells the memory systems, log this, the child didn't try to memorize it. They just found it genuinely, unexpectedly fascinating, and apparently, that was enough. There's a body of research that made this concrete in a way that surprised even the researchers involved. When people were placed in a state of genuine curiosity, not forced attention, not deliberate study, but real, spontaneous interest in a question, their memory improved not just for the topic they were curious about, but for unrelated material they encountered during that same window. Faces of strangers. Random words. Incidental details. Things that had nothing to do with what sparked the curiosity. The curious brain simply retained more, across the board. The researchers described it as curiosity widening the brain's receptive window. When the mind is genuinely engaged, everything passing through it has a better chance of leaving a trace. This completely reframes what's happening when someone has an unusual collection of obscure knowledge. It's not that they have a better memory. It's that they've been in a state of genuine curiosity far more consistently than most people, and memory, almost as a side effect, kept accumulating. There's a personality dimension that psychologists have studied extensively called openness to experience. People who score high on it don't just tolerate novelty. They find it genuinely rewarding. The unexpected question. The strange edge case. The Wikipedia page that starts about one thing and somehow ends somewhere completely different 40 minutes later. For these people, that experience isn't a distraction. It's satisfying in a way that's neurologically real. The reward circuit actually activates when they learn something that breaks a pattern. Dopamine releases not as a metaphor, not as a figure of speech, but as a measurable biological event. Their brain is telling them, this matters, hold on to it, and so they do. Without effort. Without intention. Almost without permission. But here's the part worth sitting with more carefully: the facts that stay, they're not actually random. Go through your own personal archive of strange, useless, unsolicited knowledge. The things you know that no one has ever once needed you to know. There's almost certainly a pattern there, even if it isn't obvious at first glance. Most of it will cluster around a feeling. A moment where reality briefly exceeded your expectations of it. Where the world turned out to be larger, or stranger, or more intricate than a normal Tuesday afternoon would suggest. The facts that stay are the residue of those moments. Little markers of the times the ordinary cracked open and showed you something underneath. People who collect them, whether they're aware of it or not, are often quietly oriented toward that feeling. The feeling of scale. Of depth. Of discovering that the world is hiding more than it shows on the surface. That's not a quirk. That's a disposition toward reality. There's a social dimension here too, and it goes in a few different directions depending on the person. For some people, the collecting is entirely internal. It's a private, ongoing sense of being subtly in on something, a quiet relationship with the strangeness of existence. For others, the sharing is the point. And this is worth defending, even when it looks odd from the outside. Telling someone a strange true thing about the world is actually a form of reaching out. It's an invitation disguised as a fact. Come find this as interesting as I do. Be briefly amazed at the same thing I was amazed at. Let's stand in the same doorway for a second and look at how weird this all is. That's not a trivial impulse. That's connection seeking. A specific, genuine kind of it, and the people who do it most consistently are often the ones who, somewhere early in life, got genuinely lit up about something, and were met with the message that it was too much. That no one needed to know that. That this wasn't the kind of excited a person was supposed to be, and they kept going anyway, because the alternative, acting like a world this strange and specific and relentlessly surprising isn't worth paying attention to, never made much sense. It still doesn't, so here's what's actually true about the person at the table who just mentioned, entirely unprompted, that the human nose can detect roughly 1 trillion distinct scents. They're not failing to prioritize. They're not wasting mental bandwidth. They're not malfunctioning in some charming but inefficient way. They have a brain that takes the question, what exactly is this world, seriously, somewhat against their will, on a fairly continuous basis, and quietly catalogs whatever answers it finds along the way. That's not a bug in the system. That might be the whole point of having a mind. The capacity for wonder is not a distraction from living. It might be the most honest way of doing it, staying genuinely, stubbornly, sometimes inconveniently curious about a world that has, without question, more going on in it than any of us will ever fully get to the bottom of, which, when you think about it, is a pretty good reason to keep looking. If this video made something click for you, share it with someone who always seems to know the strangest things. They'll understand immediately why. And subscribe if you want more of this kind of thinking. There's a lot more where this came from.